Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hey witches, welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked and Witchy. I am Morgan. Today I am sharing with you all my favorite herbs for magic. This March and with the beginning of spring, I've really been talking about herbs and herbal magic here on the podcast a lot. And so I wanted to end the month with my favorite herbs for magical uses. So these are my personal go-tos for different things. Now, I do want to start out with another disclaimer. If we're going to talk about herbal magic and herbs, I am not a certified herbalist. And currently, I am not on any type of meds. So I can take herbal supplements or drink teas made from herbs on my own accord. I research the herbs. I see if there's any kind of side effects that I'm not willing to handle. And I have been working with herbs for over 20 years. So I do so cautiously whenever I go to start an herb, like an herbal supplement, or drink a new tea, or brew a new herb into a tea. I do research everything, and I do it cautiously at first to see if I'm going to have any side effects or anything like that. But I'm not currently on any meds, and especially if you are on meds, there are a lot of herbal supplements that can react with certain meds. So only take herbs internally if you are instructed to do so by a healthcare professional or a certified herbalist. Consult somebody who you can talk to about what you're taking, what your symptoms are, things like that, before taking herbs internally. Okay, what works for me may not work for you or may have other kinds of side effects. So that's my disclaimer. I'm not a certified herbalist. I don't know you or your situation. So therefore, anything that I talk about on today's podcast episode is my own experience and not advice to take the place of proper medical intervention or whatever. It's so official, isn't it? Anyway, okay. Disclaimer out of the way. Let's get to it because y'all are here for my opinions, my tips, my tricks. So the first herbal blend that I want to talk about today, I discovered probably a decade ago. Actually, no, that would be almost two decades ago. Holy crap. No concept of time. Looking at it, I'm like, so my brick and mortar store I owned probably from about 2006 until about 2010. And yeah, I was just looking at the calendar and was like, wow, that wasn't a decade ago. That was more than a decade ago. Anyway, some friends of mine and I got together to use a spirit board. And I apologize. I am at home today recording and working from home today, and we have a dog and 3 cats. So if you all hear background noises, that's what they're like. Why are you home? What are you doing? And they will not leave me alone today. So if you hear animals in the background, that's what that is. Anyway, so some friends of mine and I were getting together one night after the shop closed to use a spirit board. I used to make spirit boards and I would burn them. And we decided to give it a try. And I remember shutting down the shop and going to the coffee pot and putting herbs, into a coffee filter and brewing a big pot of tea that way. And it was supposed to be a tea blend for protection, for psychic abilities, to really open us up if we were going to use this spirit board, and also for magic, just because I always kind of like to blend things for magic. And when I say magic, it's more like raising your vibrational level. So that was my intention. And what we ended up blending was Damiana, mugwort, and catnip. Now, this tea gave us the giggles, y'all. I thought we were all high. And it was the craziest thing. And I should have known that, like looking at the other aspects of these herbs. Like I said, my main intention for this tea was to open us psychically, but I also wanted us to automatically have protection, which we always, before we used the spirit board, we would always surround ourselves with salt and candles, and like we would go to that length for protection, crystals as well. But I wanted something for us to drink internally that would also help with protection. But catnip is an herb of happiness and joy. I mean, just look at what it does to cats. And Damiana is traditionally a sex herb used for heightening the libido. But in order to heighten the libido, what it does is it super relaxes you so that you kind of just go with the flow. And that's how it achieves things for lust and love, but also achieving orgasm. I mean, that's what Damiana is used for in several different cultures, is a sex stimulant, okay? So I should have known, adding these type of herbs to a blend together, that something fun would happen. And let me tell you, the giggles ensued, the happiness, it was just so much fun. We really thought we were high. But the main purpose for this tea was the spiritual visions. And let me tell you, once we got through the giggles, that was kind of like the first side effect of it. So we're drinking this tea, we're just chilling out, we're getting ready to work with the spirit board. We get the giggles, we could not stop giggling. But when we finally kind of calmed down to where we could focus on the spirit board, holy shit. Like, giggles first, spiritual openness and psychic openness, holy shit. That is, ever since that day, that has been my go-to now. I will tell you, it tastes like shit, okay? Mugwort is bitter. So, and Damiana doesn't really have much of a flavor, at least I don't think it does. Catnip, kind of sweet. You know how like there's herbs that are a little bit sweet, you know, like a chamomile, something. That's the way catnip is for me, but mugwort is bitter as shit. So this tea tastes horrible. Mugwort is very overpowering in it, and you can add just a pinch and it is still overpowering. So we adapted the blend as we moved on, and we would do this in the future. We added rose at one point for taste, but also a little bit more of that giggles, because rose is for happiness and joy, just like catnip. Peppermint, I think I've also added to it for flavor, but again, peppermint is also a psychic enhancement. So you're going to further those properties even more. A green tea blend would also work. So if you wanted to start out with like a green tea, and then add a little bit of Damiana, a little bit of mugwort, and a little bit of catnip, then you would have, it would be more flavorful, but you would still have those properties. Now, if you're asking me, oh, what were the ratios? What was the recipe? I have no fucking clue. None whatsoever. And I still don't to this day. I still just grab a pinch here, a pinch there. I let my intuition guide me. I make whatever it is. Some days it'll have more catnip. Some days it'll have more rose, because that seems to be my go-to when I add to it. But this is my go-to tea before any type of spiritual journeying. So any type of guided meditations or rituals where I want to raise a ton of magical energy, this is my go-to tea blend. And I love it. It does not give me the giggles as much as it did. It was probably also the friends that I had at the time and just that point in my life. But it does seriously relax you, and it does raise your vibration, and it does really open you up to whatever's around. It does do some protection as well, but it opens you up to just the flow of energy around. So if the flow of energy around you is giggly, that's what's going to happen, you know? So that's my first go-to blend that I definitely wanted to share. I love sharing this blend with people because it has just made such an impact on me and my magical practice over, well, now we realized it's like the last 15 years, not the last 10. My second go-to for magical purposes is holy basil, which is also called tulsi. Now, I was introduced years ago by a Chinese medicine herbalist to holy basil for stress reduction. This was back when I was really suffering with anxiety. I was borderline agoraphobic, or I became borderline agoraphobic. And I was looking towards anything and anyone for help. I was in therapy, but I was also looking at alternative healing, alternative healthcare practices, anything that would help me overcome this anxiety, because it was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was getting to the point where I was starting to leave the house less and less. And so I actually went to a Chinese medicine herbalist for acupuncture, and I had one consultation with them just about herbs and like an herbal, thing. And then I was coming back for acupuncture. But at the time, acupuncture scared the shit out of me because I just had a huge fear of needles. And I ended up having a panic attack in the waiting room, waiting for him to start the acupuncture. And I ended up having to leave. Like, that's how bad my anxiety was. But at least I had the herbal consultation first. And that's when I was introduced to holy basil for stress reduction. So, like I said, I rarely have been on meds at all in my entire life. But that was one where he was like, okay, if you really need stress reduction, anxiety reduction, try holy basil. And I said, all right. So I bought a tincture and I began using it daily, because any herbal supplements, any type of thing that you're using for medicinal purposes, it's not going to work immediately. Very few of them you'll feel an immediate change or shift within your energy or whatever you're trying to use it for. So herbs take a little bit of time to work. Usually I would say 30 days if you're going to start it. So don't give up if you want to try an herbal supplement routine or add something to your thing. Don't get discouraged if it doesn't work immediately. Because you're usually taking such a low dose, unless, you end up having the giggles from a tea. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's immediate. But if you're looking for long-term health to help with natural healing or whatever, they usually take a little bit of time. So I started using this tincture daily, and I realized that as a side effect, I don't know, like I really was starting to focus on my spirituality, and I really felt open and connected to my higher self and my guides. So I was like, well, let me look up the metaphysical properties, the magical properties of this herb, and come to find out, holy basil is one of the most spiritual herbs out there. And it is actually a sacred plant in Hinduism for spirituality, for connecting you to God or your higher power, your deities, whatever you want to call it. So I was like, holy shit. This is one of the most spiritual herbs. It raises your vibrational level. It helps open a pathway between you and your higher self, or you and your spirit guides, or you and your deities, or you and God or goddess, whatever you believe in. And it also is cleansing. It cleanses away negative energy. It's highly protective. It aligns your chakras. It harmonizes your energy. It is just an overall amazing herb. Now, it does have a lot of medicinal uses, okay? It is a detox herb, but it also has a lot of medicinal purposes, and it can interact. If you're on a med for one of these medicinal purposes that holy basil is used for, a lot of times, if you're on a med for something, you cannot use the herbal supplement in conjunction with the med. Some herbal supplements you can, and this is where it's very important for you to contact a certified herbalist or talk to your doctor, because some herbs can be used in conjunction with a med for that issue. Some of them will counteract. So definitely look up the medicinal properties. If you want to use holy basil internally, look up the medicinal properties first. Consult your doctor, consult an herbalist before just jumping into it, especially if you're on some kind of meds. But For me, I started out using it almost medicinally for stress reduction and went into a spiritual herb. So if you are on something to where you cannot take it internally, you can still burn an incense of it. You can still work with it magically, add it to a spell jar for whatever your purposes are. In doing research, it's also used in prosperity spells, but I have always just used it for spiritual opening and protection purposes. But it has a wide variety of not only medicinal uses, but also magical uses. So I highly recommend you research holy basil, or it's also called tulsi, more if it sounds intriguing to you, because it has been a game changer for me on a physical level with my stress levels, but also on a metaphysical, spiritual level as far as connecting to my higher self, my guides, and all of that. And I personally just use tinctures because they're easy, and I don't have, so if you ever get a tincture, tinctures are alcohol based, and they're always like, oh, they're going to sting, they're too powerful, don't put them under your tongue, add a few drops to like orange juice or water or something. And you know what, I just, for lack of a better way of putting it, I raw dog. Right there on my tongue or underneath my tongue, that's how I use tinctures. That's just who I am. I'm just like, let's get it in there as quick as possible. Let's do this. So for me, it's just super easy to work into my morning routine. I'm taking my vitamins, I'm taking my supplements. I do also take supplements in pill form too, but I really prefer tinctures. I think they work a little bit faster. They're really easy for me to take. And so I'll use a tincture in the morning, at night, all kinds of stuff. That's my preferred method of using herbs in a quick form. So the third thing that I want to share with you all today are amplifiers. And these are things that I will add to any spell, any herbal blend, to amplify the other herbs involved, or to amplify the magical energy of that herbal blend. My go-to amplifiers are red sandalwood and dragon's blood resin. Okay, so I will add a little bit of red sandalwood powder to any herbal blend that I go to make, or I will add a few drops of dragon's blood essential oil, or dragon's blood's a resin, so you can add it in powder form. It usually comes in chunks, and then trying to break it up is really fun. So you get like big chunks. But I'll try to grind it up into a powder form, or I'll try to just automatically get dragon's blood resin that's been ground up. Sprinkle a little bit of that into any herbal incense blend or anything that I'm going to add to a spell jar or a spell bag. Red sandalwood is also used for protection, cleansing negativity or negative energy, and raising vibrations. That's why I call it an amplifier. And then dragon's blood resin is used for amplification. So like that's its main magical purpose. It's also used for motivation and adding strength to your spell. I mean, again, that's just amplification. But if you are also looking to instill some strength, some self-confidence, things like that, dragon's blood resin is another item that you can use just on its own, or add it to any type of blend you're doing for self-confidence or anything like that. Dragon's blood is also good for protection, vitality, and banishing. They use it in exorcisms. I think any herb that can be used and it specifically says exorcism always piques my interest. I don't know why. I guess maybe it's a thing from growing up with horror movies, like growing up with the cheesy horror movies. Anytime I see exorcism listed in the magical properties of any herb, I get excited. It's like an added bonus. Like, oh, do I have wonky spirits around me? They're going to be gone. That's cool. I don't know. It's just weird. So those are the amplifiers that I tend to go to. Those are my two big ones, is red sandalwood and dragon's blood. I've used essential oils of both. I've used the ground up like powder for either one. And then also amplifiers, I guess this would kind of be like honorable mentions that I have used in spells for amplifying. I personally find that the red sandalwood or the dragon's blood resin works better, but it's worth noting Damiana, which we talked about in the giggly tea, is also an amplifier. When you add it to any kind of herbal incense, herbal spell blend, offering blend, anything, it will amplify the properties of the other herbs in the blend. And echinacea is also a spell strengthener. So it will empower your spell a little bit more, or whatever your herbal blend that you're using it for. That's a magical property of echinacea. So that's what I have for you all today. I, of course, use tons of herbs, for sleep. My go-tos: lavender, chamomile, lemon balm, my go-tos for that. I actually add herbs to my coffee sometimes. So if I'm making like a pot of coffee, or we had like a little small French press at one point, I would add rose for love and happiness, or lavender for calming. I personally love the taste of rose and lavender. They can be a little tart for some people, but I love them. My husband did not. I did not tell him I added herbs to it one morning, and he was like, "Why does this coffee taste like ass?" And I'm like, "It's not. I added rose to it." He's like, "Don't ever do that again for my coffee. Thank you." So I still drink coffee that's been amplified with herbs. My husband does not. But these are the ones, these three groups: my giggly tea, holy basil, and then my amplifiers. Those tend to be the things I use over and over and over again. Of course, I will definitely blend a specific herb blend for a spell or a ritual that I'm doing, or my go-to a lot of times after spells and rituals for grounding. I usually will eat something, but I like a peppermint tea to ground down. I don't know why, because I think peppermint is extremely uplifting. But for me, I usually have a lot of, after a spell or ritual, I've raised so much energy and I've opened my third eye so much that I can end up with a little bit of a headache and a little bit of dizziness. And for me, peppermint tea addresses the dizziness. It addresses any type of nausea if you have raised energy, a lot of energy. And this is another thing: you should always ground down your energy before you raise it up. And that's something I'm not great at. I love the buzz associated with raising energy and performing magic, even though for a lot of people, especially me, there's almost like a hangover that can happen if you did not properly ground first. So grounding is something I really have to work on, because I do love the buzz of magic. So sometimes I won't ground as much as I should, or as much as I know I need to do, because I've been doing this for 20 years. I can raise energy quickly. I can raise it pretty high. And if I have not balanced it out by grounding myself down just as equally, then yeah, I'll end up with a little bit of a headache at the end of doing a spell or a ritual, a little bit of nausea, a little bit of dizziness. And so my go-to for grounding back down and getting rid of that excess energy is peppermint tea. That's my favorite. And then I'll usually eat a little bit of cake or something like that. So there's just some more tips that I didn't even have written down for you today. Just here at the end ad-libbing, and I'm like, oh, let me throw this in. Let me throw this in. So you never know what you're going to get here on Busy, Gritty, Inked, and Witchy with me. April's Ink Goddess Creations box is Herbal Witch, and we do have some holy basil products in it. We don't have like the actual holy basil herb going into it, but we do have 2 holy basil products. So if you want to try holy basil, try using it in different capacities, I highly recommend you get the box. Plus, we're just giving people tools to perform herbal magic or to work with herbs and plants. So if you are listening to this in March, this is April's box, which will ship April 5th. And if you're in the US, you get free shipping on it until April 5th. And then once that main shipment goes out, any remaining boxes will be on our website, but they'll have shipping included. So if this sounds great to you, you can head to inkedgoddesscreations.com and just scroll down a little bit until you see the thing for Herbal Witch and click on it. You can see the sneak peeks into the box. You can choose whether you do a subscription or a one-time purchase box just to get this month's theme, whatever you want to do. But I want to thank you all for listening, for giving me a platform to share my knowledge, my giggly tea recipe with you all, and for being with me on this journey of not only self-discovery this year, but opening myself and really putting myself out there. So I want to thank you all for accepting me and for encouraging me to continue to do the podcast and to teach in the Ink Spirit Coven and all of that amazing stuff that you all have been helping me with. So thank you. And I will see you all again soon. Bye.